Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Killerrodan. So today I figured I'll just upload another video on this channel because as promised before, I want to be more frequent with these uploads. Just talking about all kinds of stuff, of course. And yes, I just figured I'd talk about more weird shit in this case, obviously. Because what I'm about to talk about is kind of bizarre, because you'd think people would be more educated in this day and age, but I guess not. And yes, in some ways kind of use this as an excuse to talk about Japan because I don't mind talking about this country or anything related to the country in some shape or form. So I just figured let's do this again. I haven't talked about Japan as of yet. I mean, I did before in this channel, but not recently. So I'm kind of using it as a way to talk about this country, of course, in that regard. But of course, to give more of an idea of what I'm talking about, I'll be referring to, of course, Fox News. Yeah, they're not actually news, they're extremely biased, of course. And just to give a quick disclaimer, this video is not to be disrespecting the veterans or whatnot. This is more in line with what Fox News has done because a lot of these religious individuals seem to have a hate border towards the Japanese because they believe in a different religion, though technically they don't believe in religion, but they're acting as if they have no souls or whatever, and which is racist, of course. And to be more exact, this has something to do with Pearl Harbor and whatnot, and the tactics, of course, and how it's something in terms of a mistake, I guess, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because when it comes to Pearl Harbor, that was a pretty good strike against the American Army, or military to be more exact, I guess, because they're doing the whole ocean thing or whatever. And their strike against Pearl Harbor was actually pretty strong against what America was doing. So I don't see how they think it was a mistake from their end, really, because they accomplished what they did at least to some extent, or at least almost. Like I said, to some extent, anyway. Maybe not entirely, no, but at least to some degree, sure. So viewing this as a mistake, but the Japanese part, I don't know about that. But anyway, here we go.
Retired General Jack Keane, Fox News strategic analyst, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War.
I mean, okay, it just started. I'm already interrupting this video. I do think it's a bit manipulative on Fox News part because whatever I say, whatever I do here, will be viewed as if I'm disrespecting the veterans, which I'm clearly not doing. But what the Fox News is trying to do, they just want to anchor in on in people's emotional reactions, of course, because they're trying to act as if, see, we have a veteran on our side. It's an American veteran on our side of all people. I guess this means we are important and whatever we say is right. It just seems really malleable as far as I'm concerned. Again, I'm just going to ball for what Fox News has done in the past and whatnot. I'm just trying to criticize for what they had done for being incredibly biased, to be completely clear.
Former Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. General, good morning to you. I'm going to get your reflections on this day. I was thinking, how will 9/11 be remembered 80 years removed? And this was the 9/11 for the greatest generation when you look back on that, General. Your thoughts?
Okay, I really did not want to talk about 9/11, but due to personal reasons. But okay, here's one of the fuck ups right here. So, what you're telling me is that the Japanese at the time, anyway, maybe not the new generation, but at the time, that those Japanese are the same as the Muslim extremists? That's I don't see that. I mean, yes, both events were of course going down in history in infamy, obviously, because both events are horrendous in their own way. That's true. But it just seems kind of odd when you think about it, you compare it like that. For further context and in reference to what I'm referring to is that, yes, the Japanese had attacked San Francisco, at least to some extent in a way, because they were trying to pass fear into the American government. The Japanese government was trying to show that, see, I guess how to say this, it's like a flexion move to us, so to speak. It's like a flex move, so to speak. Which to some that actually worked because the American president at the time was fearful of what might happen. So the American president at the time had to be extra careful.
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, we honor the sacrifice that took place that day I mean, it was a stunning event, to be sure. And as you noted, it was the vehicle that brought the United States into the war in Europe as well as in the Pacific.
I still don't understand this because of the fact that America actually took a while to actually step in to when it comes to soil tax because yes, Germany was doing the whole thing way beforehand, and yes, America could have done soil actions against the Japanese and the whole thing with the Nazis way before, which they should have. They took a hot minute to actually react, which of course is a bad timing when you think about it. So I don't know why America had to wait before they actually do anything else. So, and then when it comes to the whole 9/11 attacks, a lot of people believe that it's Bush's fault in some ways, which I can see that because when it comes to 9/11, the whole thing with the weapons of mass destruction was quite questionable, considering the fact a lot of people believe that George W. Bush, the former president of the United States, was just using this as an excuse to talk about that place, just to attack it. And another thing is that a lot of people believe that it was all a lie. There was no real weapons of mass destruction, so a lot of those stuff's getting glassed over here. But yes, anyway, with the whole Japanese thing from way back when, the United States could have actually stepped in a lot sooner than otherwise. It was just up to a boarding point, and then the Japanese and Americans were going at it. So yes, does this mean Pearl Harbor attack could have been prevented? Maybe. I'm not too sure about that, but point being, when it comes to World War II, when it comes to specific action against Hitler and all that, yes, America could have attacked a lot sooner than it would have otherwise in the actual timeline of events.
That was a calamity that killed close to 100 million people. Never anything like it in the history of mankind before. The United States bore a significant burden being in both theaters. But on that day, it was a Sunday morning for those who were involved. It was 7:55 in the morning. People are going to church, getting up, eating breakfast, whether you're at.
Okay, I don't see what the churches have to do anything. Oh yeah, because Fox News and a lot of people on there believe this is a Christian nation, which it isn't. But anyway, that aside, I still don't see the connection here really when it comes to the terrorist attacks and what the Japanese had done. I mean, yes, again, both events play a major part in American history for forever. It can never be erased. You can't ignore it. Even people might want to come up with some kind of conspiracy theories, which people had done over the years. But regardless of that, the actual truth is that these events will remain in American history forever. And you could use this as a learning lesson, kind of a thing. True, but it just seems like a lot of stuff has been glanced over, like I just said a moment ago.
On a ship or on shore, likely to similar activity. And the Japanese came with 65 ships, 4 aircraft carriers. The principal attack weapon was aircraft bombers.
Okay, factory error right there because the specific aircrafts that he's referring to were near close. I mean, yes, they did use a certain type of aircraft against the ships, sure, but those he's referring to were not that close. Of course, the bombers were used, even be a bit more specific here. The bombers were used against these bigger ships, of course, the American ships, obviously. And yes, the whole thing with the kamikazes, that happened a little later, by the way. Give you more of an idea of what I'm referring to. I mean, yes, they have to be strategical tactics, of course, that were used in war with like any other nation would.
They launched 353 aircraft. The focus was on the battleships that were in the port. They destroyed most of those. They killed 2,400 people thereabouts. And the reason they were doing it is lost sometimes is for economic control. The United States.
This just comes off like they're just being fearful. When I say they, I mean these Christians and whatnot, because they think, okay, what if the Japanese had won the war? If they have done the things more precise, which they almost did, because there were certain tactics they should have gone through. Because during the attack of the Pearl Harbor, like they almost got it right, they almost had it right because there were still a few things they did wrong. Because there were these these factories they should have attacked, which they didn't for whatever reason. I guess they must have got overconfident or something. But point being is that if they actually done stuff more properly, and if they actually won the war, at least that aspect of the war anyway, these Christians feel like if the Japanese had won, they pretty much would have lost their shit. Because, like I was saying before in this video and multiple other videos, is that they view this country as a Christian nation, despite the fact that we have the right to practice any religion, if any at all. If there were any other mistakes, of course, I'd be referring to what had occurred in Midway, because there's quite a few mistakes happened there. And if they had a better grip of China, and then that kind of stuff would have actually definitely benefited them in the grand scheme of things. I guess they must have gotten overly confident, like we're saying. They got arrogant in that regard. It's not that there weren't any contingency plans from the Americans, because the nuke was originally meant for the Nazis, by the way, not the Japanese. That was used after some time. So it's just like a lot of factors that's been dismissed here, is what I'm saying.
Their principal oil provider and resource provider, and they no longer wanted that dependency. They were going to go to Southeast Asia, take control of it there. They knew the United States would come for them if they did that. The imperial leadership of the military decided to conduct a surprise attack.
Let me guess, it's the gays' fault, right? Because I know a lot of you Christians seem to hate gays, and the Japanese can be rather flexible with the LGBT plus community, at least in some ways. But anyway, again, like I was saying a moment ago, there's quite a bit of stuff that's being glanced over again, because Japan had to deal with quite a few things, of course. They made a deal with Hitler. I mean, yes, that doesn't mean they're friends, by the way. A lot of people had accused them from being buddies, which technically was not the case. And then the whole thing with the Philippines had to deal with, and of course, Communist China. Point being, there was quite a bit on their plate. So even if they want to do other things towards Pearl Harbor, they were already dealing with quite a bit as it is, all simultaneously, because war is crazy. Of course, again, like we're saying, of course you have to have some kind of specific planning, obviously. So what are you getting at? Japanese needed some oil from the Philippines, by the way. And yes, when it comes to war, timing is important. And yes, obviously the whole stalemate with the communist China, which of course just further complicates the situation for the Japanese, of course. And that's the thing, though. There's quite a bit of this that's not being discussed here, like whatsoever. Again, Fox News just wants to spin the wheel that we're the victims here. I'm the victim. Poor little me. The Christians must be saved, and they must be sacred, of course. But we all know deep down at the end of the day, these Christians can be really mean a lot of time. They're like the most judgmental people I've ever met. And yet they're supposed to be nice. I ain't buying that, like, at all.
And deny the United States fleet from being able to interfere with what they were doing. However, they also made a strategic mistake. And that strategic mistake was twofold. One, we had 4 aircraft carriers at sea. They did nothing about them. And 2, they did not destroy the naval industrial base. So we were able to recover much quicker than the Japanese military leadership thought.
Again, you're making a glaring mistake here, because that specific thing that you're claiming that they somehow didn't get is because of the fact that they didn't know what that thing was. They eventually attacked it, yes, but much later. But again, at first they would have attacked it sooner. They knew where that was. But again, you're just leaving some detail out. Seems kind of odd if you ask me, but okay, go ahead, continue.
And even one of the most prominent admirals said, we won a tactical victory at Pearl Harbor, but it led the way to us losing the war overall. So yes, it's a day that we'll never forget because of the scale and size of World War II.
General, you no doubt have been able to meet many World War II veterans. What are some of the common characteristics that generation had?
Okay, to kind of just explain myself a bit more with the whole oil thing I said earlier that they should have attacked, I'm referring to what had happened in Hawaii. There were some factories there that should have attacked. Which, yes, if they did that, that would have definitely helped them out a bit more. Which they didn't. I don't understand why they didn't. If that was a tactical mistake that they did, it was something like that. I mean, among other things, of course. I'm just trying to be a bit more specific, unlike this guy is doing.
Well, first of all, their humility and the humbleness that they have about their participating in an event that size. I mean, I think many people, it became a defining event in their lives. The sheer scale of what they were involved in.
Again, something that's being glassed over here again is that the whole thing with the anti-Japanese sentiment. Yes, the Japanese were placed in concentration camps because the former President Roosevelt that was a good idea, considering the fact that he assumed a lot of them were spies, which of course is a lie. And this also plays into the fact that a lot of you Christians are really paranoid because fear of the foreigner and whatnot. That doesn't make any sense.
And the appreciation for this country. When you make that kind of a sacrifice and you see the horror that's around you like that and you survive it, I think it's an impetus to go out and live as good a life as you possibly can, to make the most out of it that you can, because the
Don't give me a break. I know he's trying to come off like, oh, the Japanese were just doing what they believed were right at the time. See, us Christians are nice and humble, which I have to disagree with that because I've talked about and I met a lot of Christians who are total assholes. A lot of them were. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them anyway.
value of human life becomes so pregnant to you when the loss of it is so obvious in terms of what's taking place around us. And that's why we have such regard and reverence for that great generation, the sacrifice that they bore and the burden that they bore.
Alright, that's where that ends right there, folks. So, of course, again, trying to make it that Christians are the nicest, most loving people ever. Which, again, like I just said a moment ago, I have to disagree with that statement. Trying to make it as if, like, oh, us Christian Americans are so nice and loving. No. I'm not convinced whatsoever. Because that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. A lot of people, Christians, had actually okay with killing. They're actually perfectly okay with murder. Yes, even though in the Bible it says, thou shalt not kill, but to see that more flexible, the more longer they're devoted to their religion. And must I bring you up Jamestown, or what the Spanish Empire had done, or what the KKK had done, the skinheads have done, all of which had committed these horrific things just because their God said so. So I don't agree on that statement whatsoever. Being Christian, that in itself does not make you a good person. What you do makes you a good person. That kind of a thing. Granted, sure, if the American soldiers, the military and all that at the time had attacked Japan later, after the fact that let's say they want to deal with Hitler and all that first, and just completely wipe them out, which they could have, which they eventually did, sure. But if they took care of that first and the Japanese later, although the fact that what they did in the original timeline of events, but the problem with that is the Japanese would have been better fortified, so to speak. They would have been better armed and whatnot. They got what they need when it comes to oil for their tanks or whatever else they need, of course, when it comes to supplies. Point being, they would have become stronger than they would have otherwise been in the original timeline of events. If you want to do like a hypothetical thing here when it comes to alternative history and whatnot, which yes is a popular thing by the way, when it comes to history buffs and whatnot, which is fine I guess. Anyway, but point being, the Japanese might have been too fortified if they wanted to just deal with the Hitler and all that first, and then the Japanese instead of just simultaneously. But I mean, I guess it's an interesting thought. What could have been if they'd done that? I guess make it useful for a video game. I guess if we use that kind of premise. Anyway, that'll be it, folks. I just want to do this just to talk about Japan in some ways, but there you go, I guess. So anyway, of course, as always, thanks for watching, and take care. See you.